Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kuwait 4SMEs podcast series. This series is designed to support entrepreneurs and small business owners in Kuwait by helping them to build practical skills, gain access to knowledge, and to connect with resources that they need to grow. Kuwait 4SMEs is an initiative under the umbrella of AmCham Kuwait in partnership with DHL Express. Together, we aim to provide guidance, mentorship, workshops, and platforms that highlight real-world insights and experiences from leaders across sectors. My name is Seneca Cottom. I am head of sustainability for Ashaya Group and a former board member of AmCham Kuwait. Today, we are joined by a guest who brings a unique perspective on leadership, combining academic depth and real-world applications. Dr. Arezou Harraf is the founder of Learn and Evolve and dean of the business school at Box Hill College, Kuwait. Her work focuses on what leadership actually looks like in practice, especially in complex and uncertain environments. She has recently published a book called The Uncensored Leader, which is intended to help leaders figure out, and I quote, how to challenge traditional leadership norms and lead authentically. Arezou, it's a pleasure to have you with us today, and I really want to thank you for joining us. For those who aren't familiar with your work, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Seneca. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for the very lovely introduction. My name is Arezou, as you indicated. I've been an academic and practitioner for over 15 years. My work focuses on organization systems and culture and leadership and, how everything kind of comes together. And I've been doing that through research and through consulting. So that's been my focus, and that was a precursor also for my book. Just observing, looking around what works, what doesn't work, and what people are actually struggling with and, how to move forward.
So in your career so far, what is that thread that ties everything together?
I think the thread that ties everything together is harmony. How to basically put everything together, how to find, I don't like the word balance. I like to call it harmony, how to find a good flow for whatever it is that you're doing. Because once you have a decent flow, everything just moves on a normal, authentic pace, as opposed to balancing, which means kind of indicates a struggle. And I don't like the word struggle. So harmony is the thing that puts everything back together.
Yeah, I think that's right. Because when you say balance, it's like a push-pull, which
yes. I mean, the word balance always makes me feel like, someone is on a tightrope and, one small mistake and then you'll fall. Whereas harmony, it gives you the flexibility, but it also allows for learning from your mistakes. It allows for less judgment on when things don't go right. And it allows you to also see that for others. And, that's the thing that I think puts it all together.
So in your book, you say, quote, the leadership model we've been sold assumes a world that doesn't exist anymore. And I think that is a bit controversial.
Because what I mean is everything is very stable. Everything is very given. I mean, since COVID, I have not seen that world anymore. Nothing is a given. Everything is on a flux on a day-to-day basis. But at the same time, the whole model that you have to have it together, you have to know all the answers, is still there. It still hasn't updated. We still, deal with the complexity, but still, we're assuming that all the variables are given. And if we had the 10 given variables right now, maybe we have 3 of them. And the expectation from leaders is that they have to perform as if they know everything. And, how do you calm someone's nerves when your nerves are in the flux and you don't know what's happening? So, I mean it in that context that, we are in a very volatile situation. Things change very rapidly. And this is in every sphere. This is in technology. This is in geopolitics. This is in finance. Everything is changing at such a rapid pace that unless you're ChatGPT, it's really hard to keep up on day-to-day basis. And, this puts an extreme amount of pressures on leaders because then people are looking at you for answers and you got to be really quick to answer them. And how to answer them when you really don't have all the givens.
Yeah, I think this takes us to my next question because volatility is, I think, the word of the decade. especially in this region. And I work, as I said, at Al Shaya Group. And I think since COVID, every year there has been some sort of major disruption to trade. I mean, what we're going through now isn't, this is just another disruption to trade. It's not the disruption to trade. And you mentioned, that volatility and adapting to that volatility. And I think, if a company as large as Al Shaya Group is struggling to adjust to that to the volatility, SMEs have to be feeling the same, and they're constantly reacting, as you mentioned, instead of leading. And you talk in your book about adaptive leadership. Can you explain what that is, and then how leaders can shift out of that kind of reactivity?
I think this actually works really well for SMEs because in SMEs and smaller companies, generally the culture is being developed as you go. So in larger organizations, this is already set. So smaller companies have the advantage that, perhaps they're still, under development, their culture is being developed. And I think the adaptability and the resilience really needs to be woven into their culture. And it needs to be exemplified by the leader, and it needs to be practiced throughout so that it kind of reverberates through the entire organization. That will allow for them to have flexibility. I mean, definitely planning and, just putting on my organization hat, you definitely have to have a solid risk management, plan and, getting your resources from elsewhere. I mean, it's not just, one component. However, the leaders need to show adaptiveness, and this needs to be woven into their SOPs throughout the organization. And this is going to be their, I would say, competitive advantage. If we want to look at the case like during COVID, a lot of small companies that had that adaptiveness were the ones that actually grew during the crisis, and the ones that didn't, they were the ones that suffered a little bit more.
So you in your work, so we've been talking about, adaptability and leadership. In your work, you see a lot of different leaders and a lot of different leadership styles. What do you think leaders get wrong about what leadership means?
Well, I don't want to say that, that there's one specific thing per se is getting it wrong, because everyone has their own style, and the style that it might work for one person, but it doesn't necessarily work for the other one, and that's the premise of my book. I think when they focus a lot on the perception of others, I think that's when they struggle the most. It's not what they get wrong; it's they struggle the most because they're constantly overthinking themselves, and that kind of sometimes puts them in a hot seat. But it's that very fixation on the perception, because in my experience, a lot of times when they're trying to do the right thing, the right perception happens naturally. But when they're just focused on that perception, sometimes, and they're working backwards, that's when the authenticity and the genuineness is just kind of amiss. And so they lose the perception, and they're also not performing at their optimum.
Fundamentally, what you're saying is that, when you're focused on getting it right and doing it the right way, the perception will be there. People will see that you're trying to do the right thing.
Yes.
But I think that comes with, self-awareness. And you talk a lot about self-awareness. So why is self-awareness so important for leaders?
Because then first of all, it's very important to be self-aware, not just for leaders, I think for everyone, and this is a continuous process. You don't become self-aware one time and then it finishes. This is something we continuously evolve and grow. So as human beings, regardless of the type of work you do. And it's very important to understand where you are at, okay? And especially in a position of power, how is where you're at affecting other people? If you're not aware of that, you can actually take out your anger on other people, take out your frustration on other people. Or if you're uncertain, your uncertainty can come out as punishment to other people, and you don't mean it. Okay? A lot of times people that may say or do something, they're not getting up and say, I am going to work to make everyone miserable. No, but because they don't have that awareness, they bring that with them. And this is why it's very important to be kind of in tune with yourself. Get to know yourself, because once you're comfortable with yourself, regardless of any position you're doing, you actually have that harmony that makes things happen.
Do you have any tips for us?
Yes, just kind of get in touch with yourself. Ask yourself questions. Where am I? Am I happy? Where am I going? And I have like a little workbook at the end of my book that, leaders can use. And it's nothing complex. It's nothing preachy. It's just something to get in touch with yourself. Like you call a friend and say, how's everything going? Sometimes we need that conversation with ourselves. Like, how's everything going? And my experience with myself and, just talking to other leaders, that's one of the most difficult conversations to have. So if we have to do that, the best thing is to like kind of get familiar with ourselves and see where we're at. What's our blind spots? Look for it and then address it and then focus on doing the right thing. And I think that harmony flows from that.
So one of the things that I really like, because you just mentioned about you have a little workbook about that or worksheet about that in the book. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about reading the book, is that it really kind of helped me to, and I've read a lot of leadership books.
Me too.
But there's a lot of practical step-by-step guides or checklists or think about this areas in the book that help, a leader to look at themselves and really think about what they're doing and how they're showing up, especially in terms of that self-awareness part. And you have, there's a story in there about a leader who goes to his team and he's like, it talks about a mistake that he's made and how it's impacted them. And he was able to look into himself, see that he was the reason for what was going on in the business, and then go back to his team and say, hey, look, it's going to be different from here on out. So yeah, self-awareness is really important to building really, really strong teams. So one of your doctoral degrees is in human resources or
resource development.
Resource development, yeah. And so I think as we're talking about, self-awareness and how we perceive ourselves so that we can be perceived by others, we have to also think about how do we manage people, that's a big part of the business. So what are some of the common mistakes that leaders make when it comes to people and managing people?
They miss identifying people's strengths. As they a lot, in structured HR especially, generally you see people that, they're assigned roles and you have this performance system and so on. But some of these systems are outdated and some of these systems just kind of miss the key ingredient. I believe every single person that I've worked with, they have something very special that they can bring to table. And sometimes in very, very structured places, that goes missing. You forget to look at that and you miss the greatest resource that you have. You're paying someone and they have a great gift and sometimes you miss that. And I think this is a great opportunity again for the small and medium-sized enterprises because they're just developing this, to putting that mechanism, to kind of putting in systems that actually benefits them in terms of setting up the culture, such as how do we identify people's strengths? How do we just kind of move away from the very structured, your job description to what are the other skill sets that you can bring to the table, and how can you help us? How can we utilize your strength and your talent to grow? So that's an area that sometimes I feel like it gets overlooked.
Yes, but then what happens when all of that, building up those employees? What happens when it goes wrong? One of the things, so I've had that experience of having that employee that you do all of those things with. You see them struggling, you coach them, you try to pull out all of those skills because you can see all of those skills and
Yes.
all of that light in them, but they can't pull it out of themselves. And so sometimes you have to, make other decisions.
Yes.
You have to be really cognizant of that as well. And in the book, you talk about crucial conversations, and this is something that I not recently, but we did a lot of work internally within my organization on crucial conversations, and I had never heard of this concept before. And I think that most of the SMEs that are listening out there may not have heard about crucial conversations and what that means. So can you talk a little bit about crucial conversations, what they are, and then how that, works in managing through underperforming employees?
That's an area I actually put that in the book because I found this during my interviews with sometimes a training or consulting with leaders, and they just say, I don't want to have this difficult conversation. Or things have reached to this point because I've worked with this person for 15 years and we have dinner in each other's house. and I, I kind of have to deliver the news that you're really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's very hard. I don't want to sit here and say, I have figured out a formula. I have figured out a formula that, has captured the unease of it. Yeah. It will always be an uneasy thing to do, especially with people It's easier with people you're not really emotionally vested in. They haven't been with the company, or the impact of this conversation to them is not going to be so great. But imagine a person that has been with you for 15 years, and then you're cutting back, and it's the board's decision that they have to go. That is probably one of the most difficult conversations you will have.
Yes, I've had that.
And it's gut wrenching. I've had that. It's gut wrenching, and it's painful because you feel like you're breaking someone's heart on real TV, real time, live TV. But the best way that it could be done, just keep it to the point and keep it honest. Okay, keep it honest, keep it to the point. At that point, my personal experience, and again, this is my personal experience, don't try to make it sound better because you're just going to upset the other person more. You're firing them. Don't tell them it'll be okay. It
won't feel like that.
It won't feel like that for a little bit. So just allow for the information to kind of sink in. However, I always go back to culture. The culture should be as such, especially for SMEs if they're setting it up, that such conversations have check-ins with your employees where you can speak honestly without kind of feeling embarrassed or emotionally vested, that this is, we're here for a purpose and we can maybe do things better. And at the same time, if you are having those difficult conversations, please do note that that's not a one-way street conversation.
Yeah.
Because if you're feeling a certain things towards a person or if their performance, the odds are there is a other side of the story. So as ready as you go to deliver this conversation, please be as receptive with the feedback.
Yeah.
So understand that having a crucial conversation is not a one-way street. And the feedback may be just as unpleasant as the conversation and may not be, but have that mind readiness that this is generally the case. Because if you really want to have a conversation that's difficult, but whether it's aimed at resolution or ending a relationship or ending a work relationship, always these difficult conversations need to be very, very honest, need to be to the point, and need to be adequately communicated. Okay, just make sure that you're communicating all the facts, all the reasoning in a very calm manner, and you're ready to listen, you're ready to answer, and stay away from, and again, my experience, making people feel better during the same conversation. Maybe you go check on them in a couple hours, but if you really want to make someone mad, try to make them feel better as you're delivering bad news. That doesn't really go well all the time.
So you were talking about, these crucial conversations are part of an overall culture that a leader has to build with his team.
Yes.
And so you talked about authenticity, you talked about honesty. So what other things create a good culture?
Look, culture is a very dynamic, it's a very dynamic component of an organization. It's something that's it's created, and it's not just by the leader authenticity or culture. It's how you recruit people. If how you recruit people with alignment with what you believe in and what are you setting up. And the most important part is I can set up really flowery stuff. I've been to so many companies. They have this magnificent mission and vision stories. I mean, I just put my hand, it's like, I can work there with their really nice cafes and stuff. And then you step in there and there's nothing like what they put on the website, and you're just like, okay, this wasn't it. So the best culture is created. It's the persona that you're putting out there. It actually is felt by the people who are working there or by your stakeholders.
That's that authenticity.
Yes.
It needs to be real.
It needs to be felt. It's, I can keep telling you I'm 5'9", but when I stand up, you can tell I'm 5'2". So with a little bit of shoes. But
with the heels.
With the heels, I would like to say 5'4". My kids tend to disagree, but we'll go with that premise. But the point of it is that you actually want to make sure that what you think you're creating is felt by others. Because sometimes we get so vested into creating something that we have this grandiose image and we have this fantastic thing, which is great, okay? That enthusiasm is great. But is it actually felt by the recipient of it? Yeah. Okay? Do they feel that they're included? Do they feel they're welcomed? Do they feel that they can come when things are not working, open the door, and have that difficult conversation with you? Mm-hmm. Are you open to that? And it's not easy. You can prep yourself as a leader to have the difficult conversation and put this grandiose culture in place and say, this is magnificent. But then if people are afraid to talk to you, then do you?
Do you? Yeah.
Okay? So then what is practiced and what is showcased are distinct. And again, when that harmony is amiss, you really don't have as good a culture as you want to have. And the leader may have the best intentions in the world. None of this usually happens with ill intent. It just happens when we're unaware on how our actions, how we communicate with people, even our body language. I mean, if every time you come and talk to me, I'm like,
yeah.
Do you want to have you wouldn't want to have a pleasant conversation with me, let alone a difficult conversation with me. So and little things like that would do.
So we're gonna switch gears a little bit back to, we're gonna switch gears a little bit to the region and leadership in this region. And how do you think? So I work with a lot of international brands, and when you speak to them, they just assume that what's happening there in the West can just be copy pasted and plopped down here in this region. So what do you think, what is unique about being a leader in the GCC region and in Kuwait?
I think, I'm going to have a two-pronged answer for you. First thing, I experienced that because I work with very diverse and international group of people. And one thing that I cannot emphasize enough is context matters. And the context in in Europe or in the United States and Canada and even in Asia is different. Like what's okay and what's prevalent and will work in the US will not work in Japan and obviously will not work in Kuwait. Okay? And I think in the region, this is one of the most youthful regions in the world. So I think as many of these budding leaders actually are joining the market, with innovative solutions or SMEs and so on, there are so much, the opportunities are abound for this region in terms of excellence in leadership and developing something that works for their own context. Okay? The context, and this is why I always like people to contextualize what they're learning, even my students, okay? I'd like for them to use companies here as case studies. I remember when I was new here, I was like teaching them leadership and HR. And I remember that all the case studies in the book were from General Electric and so on. And I actually asked some of my students, do you know these companies? And they're like, no. So I made it my mission to bring in case studies so that they understand. So I did like interviews with the leaders of Bubian Bank, and it was a very fun case study. And we're still teaching it, by the way. I believe the CEO was Mr. Adil Majid, and it was very, very interesting, and I learned a lot. And we did case studies with Jazeera Airways. We did case studies with Rotana. I wanted a context of names that students recognize. And truth be told, they did a lot better when they recognized the company. This is my bank. This is my airline. And if they could make it, they can actually see that in them. If someone like shows me something from very, very far away, and I would be inspired by the idea, can I literally see it for myself? It will be a little difficult. But if it's something that is right next to me, then that makes a difference. And I think for this region, as youthful as it is, I think the arena is very ripe for them to just, define the excellence in their own context and what works for them.
I think you've already answered this question, but I think youth is the strength that we have as leaders in this region. And a lot of the SMEs that will be listening to this will be young.
Yes.
And that's one of the things about specifically Kuwait that I see that's really inspiring, is that you see a lot of people who've been educated, at Wharton, in the UK, all over the world, gone to the best business schools, and they want to come here. They want to come home.
Yes.
To create their future and to create their businesses. And so we're seeing that pop up everywhere across Kuwait, all of these new businesses that are chaired by young people. So I think that is the strength that I see in this region. Yes, that is the strength,
and why not? To bring, and this is the beauty. We talked about like learning, interacting and diversity. It's you can learn whatever you're learning, the best skill sets that are out there, and apply it to your own context. And apply it as what works. The copy and paste model never works. And that is my experience. That has always been my experience. That even in my book, I allude to it. You can be the best leader in the world, Seneca, and I can come and tell you what do you do from night to day to night and every step of the way. And I can copy it and it will not work because the context is different. My personality is different. And how I will express that will completely come as different. So it's very important for all these budding leaders that are coming, all these new entrepreneurs and SME creators, to bring that excellence and apply it in their own context, what works for them, what works for this environment, what works for this culture. And I think they're doing that to a large extent. I'm very happy. I follow up on like a little startup scene and so on. I think they're doing amazing. They're coming up with these ideas and they're addressing real solutions for Kuwait. So I think that's really nice.
So we have a lot of leaders, we have these new leaders, and you talk about, in the book, you talk a lot about, being authentic.
Yes.
And you talk a lot about making leadership or leading in your own way.
Yes.
A lot of us have been leading in the way that we have been taught by many leadership gurus across many, many decades. And right now, especially, we talked about how things are changing so quickly. We feel stuck. We don't know kind of which way to go. What advice would you give to a leader who feels kind of stuck or unsure about, how they should go forward in their leadership?
I think that question applies to everyone, including myself. Okay, we're at a juncture that we are having that crucial conversation with ourselves. And based on my experience, I am, looking at your own perceptions. I'm a person that likes not to listen to myself. So I don't even like to listen to my own voice. So definitely it's very important to have that crucial conversation and looking at see what's not working for me. Why is it not working for me? And how can I rectify? It doesn't have to be like any book. Because right now we're at a context, I don't think they gave it to us in a book. I mean, how do you wake up and the technology changes every other day? And once you've adapted to the technology and you paid the change manager Now you have to send people home to work so they don't have access to the system. And then you have to cut the budget. So now you have to give them bad news. And all of this is happening from Sunday to Tuesday.
Yeah.
So I don't think any book could have prepared us. The books were great. They set the foundations for us, but we just kind of have to amend as we go because our environment, our context changed. And we have to kind of find the harmony for the context that we have. And, I have a little bit of it's not an advice, it's an observation. And sometimes we need to add a little bit, like, even for leaders, as leaders to ourselves, like a little bit of kindness towards ourselves as well. Because it's okay not to know everything. I don't know everything right now that's happening, okay? Half the time I wake up and if my app is updated, I don't know how to use it. So, I
had that experience literally
I don't know. I don't know how to use it. My kids say I have the millennial pause. When I'm looking at a new app, I don't know what to do with it. So I think we have to kind of give ourselves a little leeway as well. But understanding that rigidity right now, it's not going to help anyone. Okay, so the checkbook, I did this and I did this and I did this, it's not going to work. We need to be flexible. We need to be agile, but we just need to learn how to move forward with all the volatility.
So you mentioned just now about, working from home and everything's changing and, people are going home now, especially now, everybody's working from home a lot more now during this conflict. How do you manage a remote team effectively and keep, still be their leader? They're not in your face. You don't see them. You can't watch them. And you're still trying to build culture.
Yes.
All of those things still have to happen. And we're moving. Everything is changing. And we're moving into a more of a remote culture, even here in this region. So how do you, as a leader, how do you manage that change in those people and that culture?
Look, I want to give you a very honest answer. It's a very difficult thing to do. And I'm telling you my own personal experience. It's very difficult to keep people engaged when they're kind of moved away because of remote work. And it's not that the remote work, it's easier under normal circumstances, that the remote work, it's by choice for flexibility, daycare purposes, or so on. This person still has the availability of mind. But when it happens as a result of a conflict or the volatility, you don't know what the other person is going through. And it's very difficult to kind of keep them engaged when you don't know what's happening with them. Okay, so that engagement. So it's very important. What I think works, it's worked for me. And again, in no way it's a recipe that it will work for everyone. But have check-ins with people, just as if you would do it, normally. Obviously, if you have a team of 12,000 people, that's not possible. But have check-ins with people that are at least your direct report. Okay, understand what are they and be very attentive and listen to them and ask them questions on how you can support and what do they think are issues. What do they think that, right now it's not being addressed that may become problems later. Have a very intentional conversation with them, not just, hi, how are you? Are you good? If anyone asks you, how are you? What are you going to say? I'm good.
I'm fine.
Okay. Even if your knee hurts, you won't stop someone at the elevator. It's like, yeah, my right knee hurts. How are you? So be very intentional in the way you're conversating with people that are working remotely. Ask them on the areas they're struggling. Ask them what's working for them. If there are best practices that they've discovered, ask them to have like a little webinar for their peers. So keep them engaged and address whatever they're struggling and do it on like great increment purposes. Like if you're working online for like 6 months and you checked in the first 2 weeks and it was great, it doesn't mean that it will continue on. Just don't do it excessively because no one wants to talk to their manager that often. But
stalker.
Yes, it's just like, oh, how you doing? How you doing? And it's going to kind of sound like, now you're a predator. But you want to have check-ins, but you want to be very intentional with your check-in because a lot of people do call and a lot of people do have meetings, online meetings, Zoom, where everyone goes like,
yeah.
No, but be very intentional. Like send them what's not working, what's working. If you think something that you can share with others that will benefit them, just please bring it forth and do that. So those are some of the things that I think has worked. It's worked for me. And I've seen it work. And I'm sure there are other tools available that, out there. But to me, it's the intentionality to stay connected.
Now, let me ask, what advice would you give right now to SME owners that are listening?
For leadership?
For leadership.
Create harmony in your organizations. Understand where do you want to go, and just think on how to go there harmoniously. How can you bring it all together? How can you manage your risks, manage your finances, bring in your talent? And I know it sounds a little bit too good to be true, but once you create that harmony, you actually can navigate the challenges that you have better. Like a lot of people have asked me, actually, I had a couple of people that read my book in advance, and they're like, it's nice to have that harmony, but, problems happen. I said, yes, problems for sure will happen. The harmony allows you to navigate it more smoothly. Creating harmony does not mean everyone is going to show up to work. And as you said, when you coach and mentor someone to get the best out of them, they will not go to another company after you invested in them. It does not mean any of that. It means that you have a better flow once these things happen. So, and that gives you agility, and that gives you strength. That becomes your competitive advantage.
So harmony.
Yes.
What do you think a leader can start doing right now? If you had one thing you can say, if you do this right now, you would see an immediate difference.
Have that crucial conversation with yourself.
Ooh. That one's scary for a lot of people, though.
It is scary, but if you want to see an immediate result, that's the best one to do. By the way, I hate doing it for the sake of trans. I hate having the crucial conversation with myself, because at the end of it, kind of, when you have a tough conversation, you want to fight with someone, and then it's me. It's just me, myself, and Irene. So it's like I have no one to fight with. But it's important to have. And I think in my life, I've made many difficult decisions once I had that conversation, and I have avoided to have it. It's not like something like I wake up in the morning, it's like, okay, we got this all figured out and we're having this conversation. No, it's like something that 6 months I know I have to have a conversation with myself, and I didn't want to. So it's not something easy, but it will produce immediate results, because then if you really want to address things, if you really want to change something, you need to first see what's broken. Then you can address it, then you can fix it, then you can improve it, then you can harmonize it. But you have to first have that look.
So as we were wrapping up, a lot of the things that we talked about today are in your book, Uncensored Leader. So who did you write that book for?
I wrote the book for everyone that I saw struggling. Whether you're a team leader or a CEO, this book, or an SME leader, this book will appeal to you, because this was the struggles I saw with everyone. Struggle of showing up, struggle of being perceived, struggle of thinking that you're doing your best, but other people don't see it. And that's one of the biggest grievances I get from leaders, that like, I'm doing my best for the people that are working with me, but I don't think they appreciate it, or I don't think they see it. And so this was just something like, so why don't they? And what makes a difference between a leader that does well and is seen and appreciated, and a leader that does well or perceives that they do well, but it's not perceived that way? So what's amiss? What's missing? So this book was just, something for that. And this book was primarily also for me, because I have very difficult time, Paula sitting there, following directions from other books. So I wanted a book that's flexible, that it's okay for everyone to kind of figure it out on their own, because once you create your own recipe, it's the best thing than following something else. So you can bring ingredients. I've loved some of the leadership books I've read. I've loved some of the change management book or resilience books. They're amazing. And I learned a lot of information, but I needed a sphere to make that work for me, as opposed to just following the recipe. No, how do I get the skill set that I got and make it work for me? And that was the intention behind the book.
So you are younger than me. And so what it makes me think of when I was growing up, I don't know, maybe they still have these choose your own adventure books.
Yes.
So you wrote yourself a choose your own adventure leadership book. That's what we'll call it. So finally, what What will someone take away from your leadership book that they wouldn't get from all of the old school ones?
Well, what I'm hoping, again, and this, I hope you read the book, I don't know, but, I would like for them to move away with saying that everyone has the capacity to lead greatly. As long as they figure out what formula works for them, they understand themselves, their context, the situation they're in, and, how to make it all come together. Everyone has that potential. It's not something that, is quintessential to me or to you or X, Y, and Z, or someone that went to a certain school. Everyone has that capacity as long as you kind of, bring in everything together and see what works best.
Arezou, thank you so much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed speaking to you. And you've shared such practical and honest insights on what real leadership looks like in action, in the real world. I think the key takeaways for our listeners is that leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about staying aware, making thoughtful decisions, building trust, and continuing to adapt, especially when you're in an environment that is uncertain. To our SME owners and entrepreneurs listening, I hope today's conversation gave you a few ideas that you can reflect on and apply in your own businesses. Thank you for tuning in to Kuwait 4SMEs podcast series. We look forward to bringing you even more conversations that support your growth, your leadership, and your success.